There's a reason the Amish have been growing the same handful of crops the same way for over 200 years. While the rest of American agriculture narrowed down to about a dozen moneymakers, the Amish never stopped growing the in-between crops, the ones too fragile to truck, too slow to harvest by machine, too odd to sell at scale. My neighbor Daniel grows them because his family always has. I've counted 7 of them across his beds that almost nobody outside Plain Country plants anymore. I picked these 7 because you can grow every single one in a backyard garden. And stay with me to the end, because the crop at number 1 was once worth more, pound for pound, than the wheat growing in the same field. Let me be straight with you about why these 7 crops vanished. It wasn't a plot. Nobody hid them. Here's what actually happened. Over the last century, American agriculture narrowed down to about a dozen big moneymakers. Crops you can plant by machine, harvest by machine, and truck 2,000 miles without them turning to mush. Everything else got dropped. The seed catalogs quietly stopped carrying them. The grocery stores never made a shelf for them. They were too fragile to truck, too slow to harvest by machine, or just too odd to sell at scale. So they fell out of the modern garden almost completely. But Daniel's family, on their beds near Strasburg in Lancaster County, never stopped growing them. Not because they were resisting anything, because their family always has, and these crops feed them. That's the whole reason. So when the title says big farms want them gone, understand what I mean. It's the cold math of scale, not somebody suppressing a secret. These crops simply don't fit a system built around machines and long-haul trucks. The Amish kept the in-between ones, and here's the thing that matters most to you. Every single one of these 7 you can grow in a backyard garden this season. That's exactly why I picked them. We're going to count down from number 7 to number 1, loosely ranked by how far each has disappeared from the modern garden and by how much it'll surprise you. The one at number 1 is the most valuable of all. The crop I told you was once worth more, pound for pound, than the wheat growing in the same field. So stay with me. Each of these is a piece of plain country you can plant in your own dirt and reclaim. Let's start at number 7. Number 7, the ground cherry. Some folks call them husk cherries, and the seed packets list them as Physalis pruinosa, but Daniel's grandkids just call them candy off the plant. It's a low, sprawling little thing that grows close to the ground, and it wraps each fruit in a papery husk like a tiny lantern. Inside is a golden berry about the size of a marble, and the flavor, I'll be honest with you, caught me completely off guard the first time. It tastes like pineapple, and tomato had a sweeter, gentler cousin. Now here's why you've never seen these at a grocery store. They are too fragile to truck. The ripe ones drop to the ground when they're ready, and within a couple of days they start to bruise and ferment right there in the husk. No shipper on earth will touch a fruit that turns to mush before the pallet's even loaded, so the big operations dropped them generations ago. Daniel never did. His grandkids walk his beds in late summer and graze them straight off the plant, husks and all. For your backyard, this is about the easiest thing on the whole list. One plant sprawls maybe 2 to 3 feet wide and gives you dozens and dozens of berries from midsummer right up to frost. And here in Zone 6B, the ones you miss will drop, self-seed, and come back on their own next spring. You plant it once and it keeps showing up. But while the ground cherry hides its treasure in plain sight on top of the soil, our next forgotten crop hides everything it's worth down deep in a place no machine can reach. Number 6, salsify. Now there's a name most American gardeners have never even said out loud. The old timers around here call it the oyster plant, and Tragopogon porifolius is the Latin if you go looking for seed. It's a root crop, and when you cook it up, it carries a faint, delicate flavor that really does remind you of oysters. Here's why it vanished. The salsify is simply too slow to harvest by machine. It sends down a long, brittle taproot, 8 to 12 inches deep, and that root snaps clean in two if you rush it. You can't run a mechanical digger through a field of salsify and expect anything but a pile of broken pieces. It has to be loosened, careful, and pulled by hand, and it takes the whole season to do its work. That kind of patient hand digging doesn't fit a system built around speed, so the markets forgot it. Daniel didn't. The frost actually sweetens the root. The cold turns some of the starch to sugar, so he leaves his in the ground until after the first hard frost, which around here lands in mid-October. For your backyard, you sow it in spring just like you'd sow carrots, then you forget about it until fall and dig it after the frost. And keep this in the back of your mind, because like the crop waiting at number 1, salsify's whole value is hidden in a part too small and too delicate for any machine to ever bother with. Hold that thought. Number 5, the skirret. I'd wager not one gardener in 1,000 outside Plain Country could tell you what a skirret even is, and that's a genuine shame, because this was once a staple on European tables. Cium cicerum is the name, and before the the potato came along and pushed it off the plate, medieval cooks grew skirret as one of their main sweet roots. Daniel's got a patch of it in the corner of his far bed, and the first time he handed me one, I didn't know what I was looking at. Each plant makes a whole ring of roots, not one big tap root, but a cluster of pencil-thin white roots, sweet as can be, fanning out from the crown. And there's exactly the reason commerce gave up on it. It's too fiddly. Harvesting a fistful of skinny little roots off every plant, then cleaning them one by one is the kind of slow handwork that no large operation will ever pay for. So it slipped out of the seed catalogs and out of the markets, and almost the only place it survived was in gardens like Daniel's, where nobody ever asked whether it was efficient. Here's the part I love. Skirret is a perennial. You plant a few crowns once, you harvest each fall, and it comes right back the next year all on its own. Here in Zone 6A, it overwinters with no fuss at all. Plant it one time and it feeds you for years. But the skirret at least stays put where you planted it. Our next crop won't even do you that courtesy. It picks itself up and walks across the bed. Number 4, the Egyptian walking onion. The skirret stays politely where you put it, but this onion has other ideas. It's an old perennial, the botanists call it Allium proliferum. And instead of going to seed the ordinary way, it does something almost nothing else in the garden does. It throws up a tall stalk, and right at the top where you'd expect a flower, it grows a little cluster of marble-sized bulbs. Gardeners call them top sets. As the summer wears on, that cluster gets heavy. The stalk bends over under the weight, and the top sets touch down a foot or so from the mother plant. They root right there, and the next spring, a brand new onion comes up in that spot. Year after year, the plant quite literally walks itself across the bed, about a foot at a time. Here's why you've never seen one at a grocery store. It doesn't fit anywhere. It isn't a tidy round bulb onion, and it isn't a slender bunching onion. There's no produce bin for it, no category, no clean way to sort it and ship it at scale. It's simply too odd to sell. So the seed companies passed it over, and it survived in old gardens like Daniel's, where nobody ever needed it to fit a category. They just needed onions on the table, and like the skirret I told you about back at number 5, you plant it once and it returns forever. Here in Zone 6B, it shrugs off our coldest weeks with no cover at all, the ground freezing solid right over the top of it. You snip the green tops all season like scallions. You dig the small bulbs at the base when you want a stronger onion, and you twist off those little top sets to eat or to replant. Daniel has a corner of one bed that's been walking onions for longer than I've known him. Plant a handful once, and inside of 3 years, you'll be giving them away over the back fence. But the next crop on my list doesn't feed you out of the ground at all. You have to boil it down over a fire to get the real prize. Number 3, sweet sorghum grown for syrup. This one caught me flat-footed the first fall. Daniel showed me what he did with it. Sweet sorghum is a tall cane that looks a great deal like corn, only it shoots up 8, even 10 feet with a stalk full of sweet juice instead of an ear. Back before refined sugar got cheap, this was how a great many American families sweetened their winter. They grew a patch of cane, crushed it, and boiled the juice down into a dark, mild syrup. The Pennsylvania Dutch never stopped, and here's the number that explains why the rest of the country did. It takes somewhere around 8 to 10 gallons of fresh pressed cane juice, simmered slowly over a fire for most of a day, to make a single gallon of sorghum syrup. That's the whole reason it vanished from commerce. It isn't that the crop is hard to grow, it's that the processing is brutally slow, and no large operation wants to stand over a steaming pan for hours watching 10 gallons cook down to 1, but Daniel's family does exactly that every fall. The whole place smells like warm molasses for a day, and that one slow gallon plus a few more sweetens their whole winter. For a backyard, it could hardly be easier to grow. You sow it just like corn. After the last frost, for me, in 6B, that's right around the end of April, and it stands all summer with almost no attention. One short row, maybe a dozen feet, gives a household enough cane to press and boil down a winter's worth of syrup. You don't need the big mill the Amish use either. Folks press small batches with everything from a hand-cranked roller to a sturdy juicer. It's slow, patient work, and that's exactly the point. Which brings me to the crop right below the top of the list, one that survives on patience alone, number 2, grain amaranth. If you've ever driven past an Amish garden in August and seen a plant standing chest high with great drooping plumes of deep red or burnished gold, that was very likely amaranth. Most American gardeners, if they know the name at all, know its wild cousin as a weed, pigweed they call it, but the cultivated kinds, varieties with names like Golden Giant and Hopi Red Dye, are 2 crops in one. Young, the leaves cook up like a mild spinach. Left to mature, those big plumes fill with a tiny pale grain, an ancient one eaten on this continent for thousands of years before wheat ever arrived. Here's the detail that tells you why the big farms walked away. A single one of those seed heads holds somewhere between 40 and 60,000 seeds, and each one is barely bigger than a grain of sand. To get the grain clean, you cut the heads, dry them, rub the seed loose by hand, and then winnow the chaff away in a breeze. It's slow, fiddly handwork, and it fits the modern market no better than the walking onion did. Too much patient labor for too odd a grain. So it got left behind, and that handwork is exactly the thread that ties amaranth to the crop, waiting at number one. Both of them survive today for one reason and one reason only. Plain families never stopped doing the slow work by hand that no machine was ever built to do, ever. Hold on to that, because in a moment it's going to matter more than you think. For your own garden, amaranth is almost embarrassingly simple. Sow a pinch of seed after your last frost, thin to a plant every foot or so, and stand back. One mature plant gives you weeks of cooking greens and then a bowl of grain at the end, and it'll cheerfully reseed itself if you let a head or two drop in the fall. Now, if what I'm walking you through here is making sense, and you're starting to see how the Amish grow these odd little crops without ever once reaching for a sprayer, there's one reason underneath all of it. Daniel's beds defend themselves because the soil is alive. Living, biologically active soil grows tough, pest-resistant plants, and that's the whole back half of what I teach in my book, The 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol. Chapter 4, Building Pest-Proof Soil, walks you through it step by step. If you're tired of the chemical treadmill and you want a complete system instead of one more tip, it's $17 at backyardbuildbooks.com. If you're watching on your TV right now, grab your phone and point it at the QR code on the screen. Take your time finding it. There's no rush. I'll be right here. And if you're on a phone or a laptop, the link is right down in the description. All right, number one, and finally, the one I've been saving, and the crop that pound for pound was once worth more than the wheat growing in the very same field. Number one, Pennsylvania Dutch saffron. Most people think of saffron as something exotic, something out of Spain or Persia, and they have no idea it's been grown right here in Lancaster County for generations. The Pennsylvania Dutch carried the little corms over with them and tucked them into their kitchen gardens, and plain families have grown it ever since. It's in Daniel's beds right now. Saffron is the dried stigma of a fall-blooming crocus, Crocus sativus. And here's where you understand why nothing else on this list comes close. Each flower opens in October and offers up exactly 3 crimson threads. 3. To gather them, you go out at dawn while the blooms are still cupped against the cold, and you pluck those 3 threads from every single flower by hand. It takes something on the order of 75,000 flowers, or roughly 150,000 hand-plucked threads, to make 1 pound of dried saffron. That's why, ounce for ounce, it has long been worth more than gold, and far, far more than the wheat standing in the field beside it. And this is the perfect crown for everything I've told you today, because saffron is the purest example on earth of a crop that's too slow to harvest by machine. There is no machine anywhere that can reach into a crocus and pull 3 threads without crushing them. It cannot be done. It can only be done by patient hands at dawn, exactly like the amaranth I just showed you, exactly the kind of work the plain people never gave up. That right there is the whole reason it survived while the rest of American agriculture forgot it. Ruth uses Daniel saffron the way her mother and her grandmother did, a pinch in her noodles, turning the dough a warm gold, and a pinch in her chicken pot pie, which down here is a hearty stew, not a crusted pie. A very little goes a very long way, and you can grow it. This might be the most surprising backyard payoff on the whole list. Plant 30 or 40 saffron corms in late summer. I'll have me in 6B, that's August. Set them a few inches deep in well-drained soil, and then do nothing else. In October, while the rest of the garden is winding down, they bloom. You pick the threads at first light, dry them on a plate, and the corms multiply quietly underground and come back a little stronger every year. A patch no bigger than 4 feet across can keep a kitchen in saffron. Before I let you go, I want to come back to why Daniel's family kept these odd crops for 2 centuries in the first place. It wasn't novelty, it was that every one of them stores and feeds a household straight through a Pennsylvania winter. And protecting your harvest and putting it by is the back half of the whole system. That's exactly what I cover in chapter 10 of my book, Ruth's Root Cellar and Putting By. Ruth keeps potatoes through April and carrots and sand into March, and she taught me how a family eats from the garden long after the snow flies. If you respect this kind of traditional wisdom and you want the complete system, not just one tip, the book is the 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol, $17 at backyardbuildbooks.com. If you're on your TV, grab your phone and scan the QR code on screen. Take your time finding it. I'll wait right here. So those are the 7 crops the Amish near me never stopped growing. Ground cherries, salsify, skirret, sweet sorghum, walking onions, grain amaranth, and Pennsylvania Dutch saffron. Every one of them fell out of American agriculture, not because anyone hid them, but because they don't ship, don't machine harvest, or don't fit a market, and Daniel's family simply kept them anyway. If you only try one this season, start with the easy ones. Ground cherries that self-seed and tumble off the plant, or Egyptian walking onions you plant once and harvest forever. Those two will get you hooked. And on a few hundred plain farms across Pennsylvania and Ohio right now, none of this is rare or secret. It's just Tuesday in the garden. You're now in on something most of American agriculture forgot how to grow. Drop a note in the comments and let me know which of the 7 you're going to plant first. I read them. If this one got you curious, go watch my video on the Amish potato method, where Daniel pulls 100 pounds of potatoes out of a 4x4 foot patch smaller than my kitchen table. It runs on the same quiet logic you saw today. Try one of these crops on a single bed this year. See what happens. I think you'll be surprised how much the garden gives back when you grow the in-between things nobody else bothers with anymore. I'll see you in the next one.